From the City of Angels near the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. This is Coast to Coast AM. Later on tonight, those open lines. Here's what's happening. Another object flying over the United States. President Joe Biden ordered the military to down what he described as a high-altitude object hovering over Alaska. It was shot down near the Canadian border on water that is frozen in the Arctic Ocean. The object, flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet, the size of a small car, came to the government's attention last evening and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. The Pentagon said the object appeared to be unmanned and a recovery operation underway now. The Federal Aviation Administration issued a temporary flight restriction in the area of northern Alaska as the military took action against the object. The incident comes days after we shot down a Chinese balloon that crossed the country. Strange. Rescue crews saved a 10-year-old baby and his mother trapped in the ruins of a building in Turkey and dug several people out from other sites. As the president of Turkey said, authorities should have reacted faster to this week's huge earthquake. The confirmed death toll from the deadliest quake in the region in 2 decades stood at more than 23,700 people across southern Turkey and northwest Syria 4 days after it hit. Cal Orey, of course, is an expert on earthquakes, and I thought we'd bring her in to talk about this situation for a moment. Cal, it's a big earthquake. A lot of people died, but the biggest was in China in 1976, where hundreds of thousands of people died.
True. And the reason why this Turkey quake was so devastating, it was shallow somewhat, 18 miles. That's not super shallow. It was the strike-slip fault. It was horizontal, not vertical. Let's take it to California. The next day, everyone's saying California's next. We're going to get it, okay? We could. We did. 1857, Fort Tejon. That's about 71 miles north of Los Angeles, 40 miles near Bakersfield, 7.9 right on the San Andreas Fault, a horizontal type of the horizontal strike slip.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so big and bad. The two tectonic plates, they're going against each other, if you will. So, and also it really concerns me, and I've said it before, in 1952, Jim Birkeland, late geologist that taught me so much, in Donner, up here at Tahoe, a train was snowbound for 3 days. We got heavy snowfall. Now, if you're watching California, we had a lot of flooding and a lot of snow up here. What's going to happen with that snow melt? I mean, the ground is saturated. You know, a lot of things are happening in California. Chunks are falling into the sea, as I've told you before would happen. It's making the ground more vulnerable to an earthquake. So could it happen like it did in the past, 1857, 1952? This is the year, and I know I've been saying Southern California, and we have had some little swarms, Malibu recently, and then around San Francisco Bay Area. It could happen either place. And if it does, we don't want it to happen during commute hour, obviously. Plus, I wanted to add something, two things, very important.
Go ahead, please.
I don't like that shake alert. I was up at Clear Lake when that happened on the 4th floor, evacuated the wildfire in the summer, and that's spooky. Earthquake coming. That's scary. I'd rather turn to our pets like Jim Birkeland taught me. I have a new book out, Soulmates with Paws, and I include Jim Birkeland and sections about how your cat or dog can give you a heads up, even longer than just a couple minutes from a cell phone. So just be prepared and tune into your pets and check out my book, Soulmates with Paws.
You got it. Thanks, Cal. Appreciate it. Jim Birkeland used to tell us that he would look in the newspaper for missing pets. And if there were a lot, he would predict an earthquake coming, and he was right most of the time. Amazing. Senator Josh Hawley, Republican out of Missouri, is pushing for legislation that would create a legal age for children to be allowed on social media, arguing tech companies have engaged in harmful practices that put profits over protecting kids. Hawley has long been a major critic of social media platforms and tech companies in general, repeatedly calling for an all-out ban on the Chinese-owned app TikTok. Hawley proposed that enforcing a minimum age for social media use at 16 and requiring social media companies to verify the ages of their users. How they're going to do that is beyond me. The sun has always fascinated astronomers, and now a new development has baffled scientists. A huge part of the sun broke off its surface and created a tornado-like swirl around its northern pole. Though scientists are trying to analyze how this occurred, the video of this development has stunned the space community. The remarkable phenomenon was caught by NASA's James Webb Telescope. The sun keeps emitting solar flares called prominence that sometimes affect communications on Earth if it hits us directly, and the scientists are more concerned about the latest developments. Strange. Kevin Randall looks at weekly UFO reports for us. Here he is. Kevin, what do you have for us, our friend?
Hey, George, how you doing?
All right.
I was going to mention the briefing that they had today from the Pentagon about the balloon that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And the guy kept calling it an unidentified object. I thought sounds like something right out of a science fiction movie.
I did. I noticed that, too. It was weird.
And although it wasn't a UFO sighting, the spotting of the Chinese spy balloon certainly has implications for UFO research. What didn't make much of a splash, and pun intended there, other than scoring some political points, was the similar balloons had overflown the U.S. during the Trump administration, but hadn't been detected at the time, at least according to General Glenn Van Hertz. He said it was deduced later, but gave no real details on how that was done. Here's one of the points. These huge balloons flying at more than 60,000 feet seem to have escaped detection at the time. You have to wonder what else has escaped detection, or maybe they were detected at some level, but that information was not communicated up the chain of command. However, it has been suggested that a review of UAP sightings reported by military personnel might have had a role in the detection of these earlier flights, and another official said this was not the only method of detecting these balloons. Here's the trouble as I see it. This is not a problem of detection, but of reporting, meaning that some of the reports were not sent up the chain of command. Who was making that decision, and why weren't the civilian leaders in the military chain, from the president on down to the Secretary of Defense and the civilian leaders at the top of the services, told about this? And I touched on all of this in UFOs in the Deep State, which suggests the information about UFOs was not being communicated to those in charge at the highest levels, who really is controlling access to the information. This latest seems to underscore that lack of communication with those on top. And I will note that according to various sources, about half of the UAP sightings were of balloons or balloon-like objects. And I know from studying the Project Blue Book files that something labeled as a balloon might have another, more esoteric explanation. In other words, balloon-like is not the same as balloon. In a report provided this month, there was a sighting from Noble, Oklahoma on May 27, 2005. The witness said that while taking his nightly walk, he spotted a triangular-shaped craft at an estimated 20,000 feet and flying at an estimated 500 knots. There was no sound associated with the UFO, and the night was clear, giving him a good view of the craft. The witness said there were 3 lights making up the triangular pattern, but they were not spaced equally. He said that 2 of the lights seemed to be 50 to 75 feet apart, and the third was about 100 to 150 feet from the other 2. He said the orientation of the lights seemed to suggest the craft was flying backwards, meaning the single light was at the rear. The lights were milky white, not bright like the red and green lights of an aircraft. The important point comes next. The witness said there was a jet fighter attempting to catch the UFO. The witness said he heard the jet engines, and he said it appeared that the UFO was toying with the fighter because as the fighter approached, the UFO would speed up, leaving the jet behind. He also said that when the craft was directly above him, it made a sharp turn that left the jet unable to duplicate. The jet lost ground in a maneuver and tried to catch up again. The UFO finally accelerated rapidly, leaving the jet far behind. The fighter made a loop or two as if searching for the UFO, but finally disappeared to the north-northeast. The witness said that Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma City, is only 20 to 25 miles from his house, and there are fighters based there, and that's what we have for tonight, George.
All right, my friend, we'll talk to you next week. Kevin Rendell giving us his weekly UFO reports. After 4.5-year hiatus, author, writer, comedian Andy Cowan back with us, and he's next to talk about the neurotic vaccine. Has nothing to do with COVID, by the way. He's next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. We're going to have a little fun for the next couple hours. Andy Cowan back with us. He's a who's who in America. Back in 2017, a Lifetime Achievement Award winner with multiple episodes, staff, and pilot writing credits, reflecting more than a dozen comedies and talk shows. He produced, wrote, and hosted his Cable Ace Award-winning 6 Minutes for Showtime, wrote and appeared in Knocked Down, a Best Comedy winner at the Southeast New England Film and Music Arts Festival, created and co-hosted his comedy therapy show Up and Down Guys in Los Angeles, performs as a lead vocalist and hand percussionist in jazz clubs throughout Los Angeles, and he earned his master's degree in broadcasting from Boston University, began his broadcasting career in radio and television news in Pennsylvania. And here he is back on Coast to Coast. Andy, it's been a while. How are you?
Hi, George. Good to hear your voice. Good to talk with you.
Looking forward to this. Do some people confuse you with Andy Cowan when they hear your name?
Of course. My entire life, my last name has been mispronounced, and now I have to read about the guy whose name is not mine, who everybody thinks is mine.
So true, so true. He's from St. Louis, where I go back and forth every once in a while. And next time I run into him, I'm going to ask him if he knows you.
Ah.
Well, that's good. So what's new with you?
Well, this, with chunks falling into the sea, as you were mentioning.
Oh, my
the
gosh.
ground more vulnerable and unidentified objects in the air. I mean, no wonder I'm neurotic. But this podcast, the Neurotic Vaccine Podcast, which we have now all 8 episodes dropped this season with Jay Leno and Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful, great guest, but I seek therapy on the show. I am seeking immunity to neurosis, and my co-host is therapist Dr. Scott Cowan, and he's seeking it for me, actually, but good luck with that. I mean, he's like the placebo effect we both know isn't working. But this show has literally been years in the making, and I guess I am feeling a little healthier, George, because I am non-neurotic enough to admit to myself without feeling guilty as I draw, reactions from the listeners that this podcast is unique and special. I mean, when we could all use a little therapy these days, listeners can vicariously sit in for free and have therapy with me without needing to spill their guts, laugh, and they also get very honest insights into all aspects of life, the insanity of dating, growing older, coexisting with a culture that's moved on, how families drive you nuts, oversharers on Facebook, big issues, little issues. We're even hits in Greece, of all places, the cradle of civilization. Then again, ancient Greece loved the unibrow, so what do they know?
So where did we get the name Neurotic Vaccine Podcast?
Well, how did I come up with that?
Yeah.
Well, this used to be, as you mentioned, I think in the intro, an early version was called Up and Down Guys, where I was the down guy. I saw the glass half empty, and my co-host, therapist Dr. Cowan, saw it half full. And we did this. We initiated this in 2000 on the web, and got lots of interest. And even Lorne Michaels' company at one time was looking at it for a possible TV vehicle. And push came to shove, and all these years later, I thought, as I was thinking about a podcast, and I didn't want to continue to explain to people, no, we happened before Debbie Downer on SNL.
Mm-hmm.
And I also figured, I'm not a strictly down guy. I'm, neurotic, and it's a wider umbrella under which I could talk about all aspects of things. So hence the podcast was born, and this thing has been the most creative, empowering, fun thing that I've ever done.
And you've
to
done some
Seinfeld
great
to
things.
everything else.
And you've done some great things, Andy, to be sure. Now, what does neurotic mean to you?
Well, all right. Well, you tell me, George.
Well,
Does obsessing about this make me neurotic? I complained to Dr. K in session 8 about this. The only ones who call me these days are bots and butts. Twice in the last month, I eavesdropped on a long conversation my friend's having with his wife after his butt dialed me. And you keep listening because how often do you get the chance to eavesdrop on your friend and his wife, right?
a lot of people butt dial.
Well, see, I take it personally. That means I'm neurotic. And meanwhile, his butt dials me more often than he does.
And they don't know it.
Have you gotten a butt dial lately?
I've gotten many. They show up all the. I get a lot of telemarketing calls too. They drive me
That's
crazy.
the bot part of it. The bot or the butt. There are no human beings anymore calling me.
No, that's true. They're robots. I'm neurotic about one thing, I think.
What?
I have an obsession with burned out light bulbs. They drive me crazy. When I go to a restaurant or something and there's a ceiling bulb out, I tell the manager. I mean, that's how nuts I am about these things.
You would not like to spend time in my bathroom. I have all these bulbs that have been dead for
Oh, my
months.
God. See, especially stores that have signage like Walgreens and the W is burned out or something.
That, I agree with you.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah, there's a Mexican restaurant in Santa Monica for years that had a letter missing, and right away you get a, well, this is a schlocky joint kind of connotation.
Right, the careless.
Yeah, not to mention it's not advertising the actual name of the restaurant. It's advertising it minus the letter, so you don't know where you're going to eat.
We've got some clips we're going to play a little bit later on after the break from your podcast, and we'll go through each one, and I've got 3 of them that I pulled, Andy.
Yeah, I hear. That's great.
And we'll be doing that. But would you say you're a comedian first, that you don't take these things seriously, or what?
Well, I've always looked for the humor in neurosis. I mean, it's kind of my background. My undergrad degree was psychology, and so when I started doing comedy, my goal was to try to communicate, my own problems in a way that hopefully made me unique and it wasn't cookie cutter compared to everybody else, but by the same token, the audience could connect with on their own, so they could laugh and also feel better that they're not the only ones having these problems. So that's kind of the goal that I've continued in this show, the Neurotic Vaccine podcast. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but I think you have to be a comedian in your mind a little bit to laugh at the problems that encounter you every day, or else you really will go insane.
A friend of mine is a writer in Los Angeles. He wrote for Home Improvement, Billy Reback, and he's heard of you.
Oh, sure. I know Billy.
He's looking forward to, he's listening to you right now, probably. He might even call in next hour when we take calls.
Oh.
But you've talked to Jay Leno. You've talked to a lot of people, the late Tony Dow from Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah, that was so sad that by the time our show dropped, he had passed. But Leno was really interesting because when our show dropped, the first episode he's in, Jay Leno, it's a great episode. And it actually dropped the day after his burn accident. But I definitely wanted to have him on because I wanted to ask him, maybe he had some pointers for me, because he's the perfect guest for the Neurotic Vaccine podcast because he's one of the most non-neurotic comedians out there. And I wanted to know if he had any tips for me. He did tell me that whatever happens to him, he never gets too high or too low. And speaking of not getting too high, he told me he's never even had a beer.
Really?
I asked him, "Are you Amish?" But he actually said something that proved to be a little, in retrospect, ominous. He said, "Be glad that bad things happen to you."
Well, a lot of bad things happened to him in the last couple months. He just fell off a motorcycle and broke some ribs.
Everything to do with vehicles, these accidents.
Yeah, before that he was in that fire. My God.
Yeah, there's some messages there.
Yeah.
But the reason he said be glad that bad things happen to you is basically in terms of the stuff a comedy performer can share with audiences, those bad things, to make them empathize with them, which is one of the things I at least try to do in the neurotic vaccine.
Andy, we're going to take a quick break and come back, and then we'll get right into some of these clips from the neurotic vaccine. You can tell us a little bit about them when we come back, and we'll take calls next hour on Coast to Coast AM. We will take your calls next hour with Andy Cowan, and, of course, if you have some kind of neurosis that you want to share with us, definitely call and tell us what it is. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. We are back with Andy Cowan, and we are taking your calls next hour. If you have a neurosis, definitely check in with us. And I got to come and hear you play music. Where do you play at?
Oh, well, we had some really interesting gigs late last year. I got to play on the studio lot where I worked on 4 sitcoms, including Seinfeld.
Oh, that's cool.
A special event there, and just to be back on that lot performing was surreal. But and then we were at Mountain Gate Country Club for an anniversary Ferrari event for people. So it's very that's therapeutic in a whole other way.
We've got 3 clips from your podcasts, kind of set the stage. Clip number 1 is called Shark Tank with Mr. Wonderful. Tell us about
that's my favorite episode.
And this is the bleeped-out version I got.
yeah. Session 5, Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, came on the show, did a generous interview for about 20, 25 minutes, learned all kinds of things. And then I recreate Shark Tank on the show, because Shark Tank's always been one of my favorite shows. And I pitched 5 crazy business propositions to him, complete with music and special effects, and listeners can finally hear one of the ideas he shoots down, shot behind the barn. You know, he always says, go shoot that behind the barn. Well, I had the sound ready for that. But it is such a fun and funny show. I love that episode. And this is one of the this is one of the projects that I pitched him that required that I had a quick pick-me-up post-celebrity interview therapy session with Dr. K. It's something we do in the show where I zoom out of the celebrity interview into a quick session with Dr. K, almost like I'm a fighter and in life returning to his corner, and my shrink is Burgess Meredith in Rocky, and he's counseling me on what just happened with the interview. So that's a funny little thing that happens with the celebrity interviews from time to time. But I think we may have an example of that with Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful.
Here we go.
Tom Wolfe was right. You can't go home. This idea sucks.
Was that what you like to call a nothing burger?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's definitely not your best. Let's see something else.
Your face on a carton of veggie burgers. Nothing burger. Nothing in the way of meat. I'll take 2%. I can't stop pitching you, Kevin. Does this happen to you in public restrooms? People are always approaching you with pitches.
Yeah, I get a lot of pitches. And you know what's funny? Every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while, I hear something interesting and, next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire.
Okay, it's still early yet. Next into the tank is a money-saving way to avoid embarrassment. Hi, Shark. I'm Andy Cowan from Santa Monica, California, and my company is called Presto Changeo. I'm all for tipping, especially low-wage earners, but tip jars are everywhere now. Starbucks, bagel shops, Moyles. Little joke there. In this economy, when it comes to giving customers watching their own pennies a break, there's got to be a better way. Presto Changeo, a tiny device featuring 2 buttons you'd hide in the palm of your hand. And as you center your clutched palm over that tip jar, hit button 1 for the digital sound of lousy service, or number 2 for good service, but not good enough to drop actual change. Yes, they may call you cheap for not leaving paper money, but it's better than thinking you left nothing. So, Shark, let's leave nothing to chance and go fake change the world.
Wow, you're a bag. There's no question about it. It is so cheap. That is absolutely so cheap.
I wanted him to like me. He called me a bag.
He was in character.
Like on Shark Tank?
Yes.
I've never heard him call anybody on the show a bag. Watching Shark Tank will never be the same. I used to fantasize I was in that tank and Mr. Wonderful was offering me a deal.
You're reliving the Mr. Wonderful interview more than any others we've done. Let it go.
After calling me a bag. How do I keep that fantasy alive?
Let it go.
So you do a lot of comedy within these, don't you?
Yeah, I slip it in. I must say, as I told Mr. Wonderful, we'd also be helping all those low-wage earners who spend their hard-earned money at Starbucks and make the bosses more likely to give their low-wage earners a bump in pay to compensate for fake tips. But he didn't go for that. I had to shoot it behind the barn.
Now, our next clip has to do with something between June and Ward Cleaver, your version of the Leave It to Beaver household.
Yeah, that was the episode in therapy where I, of course, talk about my family and how they drove me nuts and their parents drove them nuts, and you can't blame them because their parents drove them nuts. And then, obviously, what a tie-in to The Perfect Family, Leave It to Beaver, which I begin to complain about, I think, in this clip. And then I get the thrill of combining the made-up world of Leave It to Beaver with the actual performers. See how this plays out.
Here we go.
My mother didn't wear a pearl necklace every day. My father didn't unfailingly connect my experiences with childhood memories of his own. Ward, I'm worried about Beaver and Wally. Well, I'd be worried if you weren't, dear. It seems the two of them have been locked in their room for 5 hours. Now, what do you suppose they're doing up there? Only one way to find out. I'll go give a look-see. Wally, Beaver, Wally, Beaver, Wally, Wally, Beaver, Wally, Wally, Beaver, Wally, hide this stuff. Would you two like to tell me what's going on? She Dad. Suppose we wouldn't. Beaver, was that moaning I heard at the door? Maybe it was Mom? Beaver, Wally, are those girly magazines I see under the bed? Heck, Beav, the jig's up. Yeah, Dad. Well, I remember when I was your age, I did quite a bit of that myself.
I want to thank you both for your contributions to our culture.
I appreciate that. We sure had a lot of fun doing it. We had more fun doing it than a lot of people have watching it.
Does that mean you might want to do it again?
Absolutely.
No.
What a killjoy.
I think we beat that dead horse to death. We've already done an adult series. We've done a feature film. We did a movie of the week. You know, how much stuff can you do on this?
Well, now we're old and grandparents. That's even better.
But the movie kind of put a dent in everybody's love for the show, I think, because it wasn't really like the Beaver show was.
Yeah, but we weren't in it, so that's probably why.
Ward, I think I hear Beaver and Wally arguing. I hope they don't have another one of their pillow fights. You know, dear, I remember when I was their age. Ward, stick a pillow in it.
Andy, do you write these yourself?
Yeah, I do.
They're produced
I do, and then
well.
I do the voices, too.
And they're produced well with sound effects and everything else.
Oh, boy, this is so... For a neurotic, anal retentive person such as myself, I am dealing with so many moving parts in this show, and it's so creatively fulfilling. And, yeah, I hope listeners get a kick out of everything.
Did Tony Dow have a good time?
Yeah, they were both very nice. I got the sense after the interview that, wow, these are two normal people. Because, you never know with some of these celebrities.
Sure.
They may be copying an attitude or what have you, but they were just the sweetest people. And, we conduct the interviews on a Zoom, so I get to see them. They see me, and then I grab the audio files and edit them afterwards. But they and their wives couldn't have been nicer. So it's, Leave It to Beaver was a big thing for us growing up.
Oh, it was huge.
You don't want to be disappointed when you meet your heroes, so to speak, and I certainly was.
True. That's true. Our last clip here has to do with the Big Get survivor. Tell us about this.
Yeah, we have certain big gets, some of whom don't call in, so you only hear our ends of the conversation, like Oprah or Dr. Fauci. But in this case, this was Henry Diggles, 108-year-old Henry Diggles, a person who survived both pandemics so far. What an antibody system he has going here.
Here we go.
Henry Diggles, a man who's survived this pandemic and the one in 1918, is about to survive talking to us, Dr. K.
Very excited.
Well, tell your voice that.
I can't wait to hear what Mr. Diggles has to say.
Hi, Mr. Diggles? Mr. Diggles, are you there? Yes. Sir, thank you so much for calling. This is a real honor. Can you hear me? Yes. You were 4 years old in 1918, were you not? Yes. They didn't have preschool then, so you must have been in kindergarten or close to it? That's how old I was when I started kindergarten. Is this about you? No, this is about you. Tell us, sir, what do you remember about the pandemic? At such a vulnerable age, you must have been really scared.
Oh, yes. I could see the fear in Blitzer's eyes.
Wolf? No, the 1918 pandemic.
It's my biggest fear, Andy, to have a guest like Mr. Dibbles who just goes, yes. That happens.
Yeah, I would
God.
imagine.
That's funny. Who played that part?
That was me. Believe it or not.
You did that too?
Yep. It's so funny. I mean, I actually got a kick out of it after it was all produced because I wasn't sure how it was going to come out. But I do the voice, and then I put it through a phone filter effect, and then edit it, and, beats here, no beats there. Every little speck is just, poured over. And I was really pleased with the end result. I actually bought the fact that I was talking to another person because I made sure I was talking over the person at times, so you don't get the sense, oh, it's the same person.
You've interviewed a lot of celebrities and superstars in your career. Which one had the biggest effect on you?
Oh, no doubt, Orson Welles. I mean, I pre-interviewed him 8 times leading up to his final appearance on the Merv Griffin show the day before he died. And he would always come on and do a magic trick. And he seemed to me, as intimidating as was talking with him, he seemed to, I remember out of all the celebrities, he was one of the few that would ask, what do you think? Which was incredible.
Yeah.
And Laurence Olivier, when I picked him up in a limousine, that's a whole other story. But about the time, call me Larry. And I was having him sign a book. Well, actually, yeah, he was signing his galleys to me that he was talking about on the show. And I was so excited. And I went back to the studio and handed the book to him. And Merv's cousin, Charlie Haig from Hill Street Blues, was on the show and gravitating towards the actor's actor. And he gives it to Olivier and says, sign it to Merv. So I'm crushed. Olivier goes and does his spot, comes back. I explained to him what happened, and he said, ooh, I'm a good cheater. And he takes the Merv and he turns it into Andrew. So I have it to this day. And if Merv had found out, he wouldn't have been too pleased because a couple years later, he had Jimmy Carter, one of my guests, on the show, and he said, we'll be right back. And he opens up the book, and he was going to have him sign it to him, and it's already signed to the talent coordinator, another talent coordinator, and he hit the roof. It was the first time I saw Merv angry, and the talent coordinator wound up quitting. So,
really? Just over that?
Yeah. So I ducked the bullet there.
It's amazing Jimmy Carter's still going strong.
Unbelievable. 98, isn't it?
Yep, that's fantastic. I've ran into the last 3 weeks Paul Anka, Danny DeVito, and I bought a soda for Al Pacino.
Oh, what a great group. I'd love to have a party with those 3.
Great talents, too. All of them.
Absolutely.
All of them. But what got you to leave Pennsylvania to come out to Los Angeles?
Well, it was starving in New York or starving here. So I figured this was slightly more temperate. And, of course, I didn't factor in the ongoing fear of earthquakes. But, I was doing stand-up at the time and came out here to do it and, worked the Comedy Store and the Improv and was substitute teaching on the side and basically playing Family Feud with the students. They always loved it when Mr. Cowan showed up to teach. writing spec scripts on the side, taxi spec scripts, which, by the way, I get to realize a writer's dream on one of the neurotic vaccine episodes with Mary Lou Henner.
Ah, she's great, isn't she?
She's great, and her super memory, that's a whole other thing that I'm traumatized by with Dr. K. Oh, she remembers when she was baptized, but she didn't remember when I interviewed her on the Merv Griffin show? I must be unmemorable. But anyway, towards the end of the interview, I get to play Lotka. I turn from Andy Cowan to Andy Kaufman and play Lotka from an excerpt of a first draft taxi script.
He was hilarious. You know, when he died, people didn't believe it.
And she played Elaine Nardo with me. Yes, I know. There was a whole... That's right. He was like Paul McCartney. Was he dead or was he not dead? That's right.
They thought he faked his death and everything.
It was such a shocking death. I think a lot of people had to wrap their heads around some other explanation.
Andy, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to take a short break and come back and take an hour of phone calls with you. We're talking with Andy Cowan, and share your stories, folks, if you have some kind of neurosis that you want to share, like my light bulb fixation. And this hour, we'll take your calls with Andy Cowan, so jump aboard, share your neurosis with us, and we'll have some fun chatting about it. Andy, how can people listen to your podcast?
Well, they can access it wherever they get their podcasts. It's from Benstown McVeigh Media Podcast Networks. Shout out to Mike McVeigh, Chachi, Suzanne Aksu, Robbie Gessel, Lisa Dollinger. But it is available on iTunes, Apple, wherever, Spotify. And 8 episodes, all 8 episodes of the first season have now dropped as of this week. And we're really proud of it, and I hope they check it out and enjoy it. And if they like it, please rate and review.
Super. Mike McVeigh is a great guy, by the way.
Oh, yes, he is a terrific guy. I will tell him you said that.
Tell him hi for me, and let's take some calls this hour with you as we talk about neurosis. Now, tell me again, how did you get the name?
Well, I was figuring in the early stages of the pandemic with the word vaccine, I think it was around the time they actually determined vaccine was the word of the year. I figured, well, it would be an interesting pairing up of being immune to neurosis if I were to incorporate that title. Hence the neurotic vaccine, my attempt through my therapist, co-host Dr. Kapoyan, to seek immunity to neurosis.
And the doctor's a real psychologist, isn't he?
That's right, yes. Yes, he is a psychologist, a therapist, and he's a terrific guy and has got a great practice going, and there's an interesting chemistry we have, and I give him, a gentle, hard time, and he tries to see the light and set me on my journey to have a healthier mental outlook on things. But it's really funny. It's therapy too, and there's some poignant moments too. But it's really funny. I'm really proud of it.
Is he funny, or is he more of a straight guy?
He is a straight guy, but he will throw in some funny stuff. I mean. It's really refreshing to hear from him. And then after the therapy, in periodic comedy bits like Neurotica Theater, where we demonstrate declaring moral bankruptcy. I love that. If you can declare actual bankruptcy, why not moral bankruptcy? But
right.
I have the doctor play parts as the civilian here and there. So after you've heard 20, 25 minutes of therapy with this professional therapist, it's funny to hear him slip into these performance pieces as a quote-unquote civilian. So there are a lot of interesting layers to the show that I really think people will get a kick out of.
Were you born in Massachusetts?
No, I'm Philly born and bred.
Philly born and bred.
Yes.
But you made your way to Boston U, huh?
That's right. I wound up in grad school at Boston, so I never picked up that accent, and I slowly but surely got rid of my Philly accent. So although it's still there, I do hear it creep back in from time to time.
What do you think about television these days, Andy?
Well, boy, it's a constantly evolving thing with streaming. Initially being, the godsend that everybody was ponying up big bucks for, and then there was overinvestment on that front, and then they're paring back, and now you get all these cuts at Disney, but they're still trying to, amp up the streaming. That's Iger's big role. So much is going on with new ways of And that's something I also pitched to Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful about the difference between, the isolation of watching streaming movies versus going to the theater. And I pitch him a project that enables you to have the joy of both worlds. But I'll leave that to the listeners to check that out. But yeah, it's a whole new jungle out there.
Are the theaters kind of waning in spectatorship?
Well, they say it's recovered more than they feared, but it's not up to what it was, and now they're trying. Just recently, I heard AMC is going to be charging more for premium seating in the middle and cheaper seats up front. And they're really trying to figure out a way to make. I mean, they were so spoiled by making all those big bucks for so many years that now they really have to work harder for it.
Well, there's nothing like being in your home watching your own favorite movies.
Oh, you are preaching to the choir, George. And I just finally got a 65-inch QLED smart TV with a terrific sound system. And, I don't have to pause the movie to go to the loo in a theater, or I can't. I don't have that option.
That's right. You can do it at home. That's right.
And nobody's kicking the back of my couch.
And go to your refrigerator whenever you want to.
That's a tough act to beat.
All right, let's go to the phones. This hour's going to fly by, Andy. Let's start with Mike in Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the program. Hey, Michael.
Hey, George. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing,
Great
Mike.
Interview. Absolutely. And Andy, I got to tell you, you are such an interesting guy. I'm a huge fan of some of your shows, Seinfeld, Third Rock from the Sun. So thank you for your work. And I just had a quick question. I wanted to ask you, have you ever had like a script that you pitched that you thought was absolutely outstanding but wasn't picked up? And if so, how did you sort of use that rejection to your advantage?
Oh, boy. That is all in my, if I can quickly slip in product placement, my book, Banging My Head Against the Wall, A Comedy Writer's Guide to Seeing Stars, forward by Jay Leno. I was on the show with George kindly in 2018 on the book tour, and that's what it's all about. I talk about all those bumps in the road and how you just work slavishly on something that you believe in, and it's so difficult to get everybody, especially by committee when they all have different opinions and they have to appeal to different bosses and everything else. Even Michael Smerconish, who's on the podcast, talks about the value of rejection. He actually goes on college campuses and talked at a commencement address about how important it is to be prepared for rejection, especially in competitive fields like entertainment.
And pitching, Andy, has changed dramatically over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
now they want to see a little pilot from you. In the old days, you could just sit there and talk about your show, and you didn't even need a script.
Yeah, the more self-contained it is. Yeah, hey, it's even a bonus if you have actors preliminarily attached. I mean...
That's right.
It's a challenging situation has become even more daunting.
Medford, Oregon, we go. Linda Marie is with us. Hello, Linda Marie.
Hi, George. Hi, Andy.
Hi there.
Hi.
Here's something I'm neurotic about is the wrong music played at businesses. I'll either say something or just eat too fast or shop too fast and get out of there.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're talking about the music that's played in stores, the soundtrack,
or restaurants.
Yeah, stores or restaurants if they play, the cook, pedantic blues, and I'm trying to have a nice dinner.
Oh, you are again preaching to the choir here. I always thought, what do I have to pay cover to go in and eat? And then I didn't ask for this music. So many times I'll go into drugstores, Rite Aid or whatever, and I have to listen to, what's current now, not all of which I like, and they're obviously ignoring a lot of people who may want to hear other music. Burt Bacharach just died. Yeah. I'd love to hear his tunes playing in the store. I doubt if I'm going to be hearing those. So, yeah, you're a slave to the songs that they thrust upon you, and it does become oppressive.
Linda, what do they say to you when you ask for a change?
Sometimes they're open to it. Other times they're like they don't care. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Andy, is did you schedule Uri Geller to appear with Merv Griffin?
Yeah, I didn't do the scheduling. I did the pre-interviewing, but I remember interviewing him about a few bent spoons in the early days of my stint with the Merv Griffin Show. So he was on there, I think, quite a number of times, actually.
Yeah, he was a dear friend of ours, and he tells us a great story, Andy, about how he was on Johnny Carson's show first, and he thought he was destroyed.
Oh, really?
Because he failed to be able to do anything. He couldn't bend spoons. He just panicked. He felt that Carson and James Randi, the amazing Randy at the time, had set him up. So he went home all depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden he gets a call from the Merv Griffin Show, and it saved his career.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yep. I mean, you guys saved his career, and he took off like a rocket. He's still going strong. He was just on the program a couple weeks ago.
How about that? That's terrific.
He lives in Israel now, and he's doing well.
Yeah, Merv helped a lot of people, actually.
Yep. He was a great talent, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Where did he originate from originally? Do you know?
Merv?
Yeah, was he out of Pennsylvania?
No, I don't think that was Pennsylvania. I know Mike Douglas was doing his Philly talk show there.
That's right.
Yeah, it's funny. People used to kind of interchange those two from time to time. And yeah, Merv had his syndicated show in New York, the Little Theater, and then he came out here and in Hollywood. So, yeah, he was a major force back then.
Who's the greatest comedian you've ever come across?
Oh, my God. That is interesting. Well, I just what comes to mind, and this probably doesn't directly answer your question, but lately I have been binging on Bob Newhart in both shows. I just finished the whole Bob Newhart show all over again, and of course I enjoyed it in its original incarnation. And I'm watching Newhart, and I love the guy. I mean, just the reactions. And I used to love Jack Benny too, who I actually met towards the end of his life. But so just in terms of enjoyment, not necessarily best comedian, he just does it for me, Bob Newhart.
I met Don Rickles a few years ago before he passed on.
Yeah.
And great talent there, too.
He was on the Merv Griffin Show, too. He was so sweet, and he was such a nice, meek guy, and then he'd go on stage and go for the jugular, and I remember, I may have talked about this with you last time, I wrote, the intros for Merv, and I wrote a wisecrack intro for him. My next guest is about to star in a special on Showtime. It would have been a series, but they figured a special would last longer, something like that, right? So I had just finished talking with Don, such a sweetheart, so I kind of felt guilty. And, of course, he comes out and he plays the angry guy routine, but it was all an act.
Bob Newhart's still alive, isn't he?
Amazingly so. In fact, I actually tried to reach out. I reached out to his people to see if I could actually get him on the show, and I think he's slowed down and isn't doing much, but I would have just loved to have picked his brain about the Sophie's Choice between the Bob Newhart Show versus Newhart.
Just incredible talent. Rodney Dangerfield, he was good, too.
Oh, I loved Rodney. Laugh out loud comic.
Did you ever meet Sam Kinison?
I loved Sam Kinison. He was just electric. And no wonder Rodney gravitated to Sam, right?
Yep. What a tragedy there when he died in his car crash.
Horrible. Boy, was he a Hirschfeld caricature or what, Sam Kinison?
Yeah, one of a kind. I mean, they were just... Would you think comedy from the 50s and 60s is different from today in terms of the risqueness and things like that? I mean, they don't use swear words in those days. Today they do. I could never put them on the radio because I'd have to be bleeping them every 2 seconds.
Right. Like Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Beep.
But, I mean, of course, Lenny Bruce, tried to mix things up in that way. But, everything was so on the straight and narrow then. But it's funny, there are other things back then that don't age well, obviously. And then other aspects of, again, I go back to Jack Benny. If you're going back to traditional, he was just so great at milking a character and letting the players on the show share, if not sometimes hog the spotlight, and it all made him look better as a result. So I loved that aspect of him, and he was just such a lovable character.
Would they succeed today? The Jack Bennys, the Jimmy Durantes, would they make it?
Well, some modern version of no, I don't think you can ever go back again. You can't go home, but I still think there's an opportunity for some other kind of comedy that, you know, doesn't necessarily always have to be edgy for edgy's sake, or touch hot buttons, invite controversy. Not that all comedians do that, but there are all kinds of hip yet more relatively benign ways of being contemporary, I think.
Absolutely. Would you still write for a show if you had a chance?
I'm so in the mindset of writing for myself after all these years, but yeah, I mean, if the right show popped up, which is, it's a young business, and I must admit I'm not a big fan of sitcoms these days. I'm actually catching up though. I'm streaming on one that I just love the production value, and I love her. And it's funny. It's that era is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I just she may not be the funniest comedian, even though she's playing a comedian. I don't buy that she's necessarily genuinely funny in that role, but she is compelling and adorable, and all the players are great, and the production value and the music and everything. I'm late to the party. That's what happens with streaming as well as podcasts. Mike McVeigh told me that like with this podcast, people are discovering it all over again.
Yeah.
So it's nice that way.
Next up, let's go to Joe in Long Island, New York, east of the Rockies. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
I have a couple of things. It'll take me a minute. One was I was thinking about, psychology and self-help. I'm reading some self-help books. Like just self-talk, how that you could improve that or even change it in a negative way. Like one of the books I was reading on an audio book is Stop Self-Sabotage by Judy Ho, and it says you can play the devil's advocate. And an example might be you're doing something like playing tennis and you find out you're not that great and say, hey, I'm not that great, and instead of always like saying, oh, I got to be a great achiever. Then another book I'm reading as an audio book is How to Analyze People with Dark Psychology. And one little metaphor I liked is you have a right to, look out there for something shining and try for it. And I love that little metaphor. So, and then I was thinking of a novel that I read way back, Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. And it was like, I know George loves A Wonderful Life, but it was like A Wonderful Life in reverse. It took a woman that was friends with all these kids at a baseball game, and Owen Meany wasn't a great hitter. He hits a home run. It hits her in the temple while she
jeez.
Yeah, she dies. And then it takes every character, and they go through all their troubles, and it interjects where if she was there, she was such a wise person, how she would have changed their lives and helped her had she lived. And then my last question is, what did you think about the Three Stooges? Because I have a female friend that reminds me of like the one of the Three Stooges.
Larry Cowan with Curly, right? Larry Moe and Curly.
Yeah, or Shemp when Curly was ill and later passed.
Yeah,
it's funny you mention a woman because the proverbial take on the Three Stooges was guys like them and women don't. But they made me laugh. I mean, there's something. I just love the classic element of comedy from those days, and it just. And of course, I was a kid and weaned on it, so I can't help but have a fond spot. But I think Curly could have been a star. I think they even echoed that too. Alone, he was that good.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to come back, Andy, and take final calls with you in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Next hour, we begin open lines here on Coast to Coast, and when we come back with Andy Cowan, we will take final phone calls with him as well, so make sure you're part of the program. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Andy Cowan. Andy, is it difficult writing comedy?
Yeah, if you're not in the mood, and comedy writers are experts at procrastinating, but once you get into the zone, it is surprisingly sometimes effortless. But it's getting to the point where you're in that zone that can sometimes be challenging.
Now, do you read the scripts that you've written, and if nobody laughs, you take it out, or what?
I'm my own most severe taskmaster. So I think when I get it to the point where I'm satisfied with it, especially this many years into my career, I don't pay too much attention to how some may react to it if they don't quite get it as much, because boy, you can't please everybody, especially with something as subjective as comedy.
Well, that's true. Let's go to final calls. Let's go to Scott in Costa Mesa, California. Welcome to the program. Hey, Scott.
Hey, George. Hey, Andy. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I've got two things. I've got a neurosis, and then also just today I was actually on YouTube, and I went down the Seinfeld bloopers rabbit hole. And I totally recommend, if you want a good chuckle, just watch that. It's hilarious, and I couldn't stop laughing. But my neurosis is that I live in Southern California, and I see these shipping containers that come from all over the world sending us our future trash. And it's all going to end up in a landfill, and it's just one of those things where I just can't get that out of my mind, of this the consumerism of stuff.
Well, we need more neurotics to be concerned about that.
Yeah. So anyways, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. There are floating plastic islands out there, Andy. Everywhere.
Yeah, it's really frightening if you think about it.
What would you say bugs you the most?
Well, it bugs me that I'm worried I've started crossing over from annoyed to crotchety. I want to make sure I don't make that transition.
Yeah.
This is one case. I get crotchety when I can't answer my own security question to get into a website. First name of your high school prom date. I didn't go to the prom. Wendy Coltman rejects me, and 50 years later, I can't get into my own checking account?
All because you forgot.
Oh, no, all because she rejected me, and I didn't have any prom date, so I don't have any answer to my own security question. That's even more frustrating.
Oh, that's you're putting in the question already.
Yeah.
And the answer.
One of the options for a security question doesn't even apply to my life. I didn't go to the prom.
The worst thing is, after you put the question and answer in, you forget the answer.
Oh, I know. That's it. There's so many passwords that you have to remember through the course of a day.
Oh, my God.
It's another thing that drives me nuts in a Word doc, when the colon and the right parenthetical emoticon, do people still remember what emoticons are? Defaults into a smiley face emoji.
Yep.
I'm not smiling. I'm crotchety about having to take the time to retype the colon and right parenthetical.
I'm amazed at how smartphones remember your passwords.
Oh, those smartphones.
I guess, is it through Google or something does it? That's
the cloud.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's. I was such a late user of a smartphone. I didn't get a smartphone until the end of 2020. People couldn't believe it.
Are you kidding me?
And then all of a sudden, my life, to have a GPS finally in the car, as I explained to Dr. K, it was like Beethoven finally getting a hearing aid. Me with my bad sense of direction. All of a sudden, I was driving with a smile on my face. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I had a little Motorola flip phone for a long time.
Oh, I did too. I had the Motorola.
They were nice. They were pockets, so you put it in your pocket, a real small little thing.
But everything old is new again. Then what became hip was the smartphone that bends. So it's like a flip phone.
I remember at a restaurant once, and I was on my flip phone, and a couple people came up to me and said, "You're a dinosaur." And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Look at this." And they're showing me their text messages. I wasn't even texting at that time.
I know. I was there too.
You know, and then you make the switch. I could never go back. Could you?
Forget it. Oh, no. It is just transformative. Between that and I'm still a dinosaur, I still have an AOL email address. But I do have Gmail. But that AOL, you can't beat it for attaching pictures. I'm sorry.
That's right.
You have to make fun of me.
Let's go west of the Rockies. Charles with us in Sacramento, California. Welcome to the program. Hey, Charles, go ahead.
All right. Hi, George. How's our connection?
Good. You sound okay.
Okay. Great. All right. So I'm over the wall, too. I have the AOL account, if that dates me. So I wanted to drill down deeper on this thing you were talking about. You write for yourself now. Do you actually pay yourself to do that, or?
Well, sometimes it's a freelance thing towards getting a paid job.
Okay.
I also write. I have a feature script that I'm still peddling that took a long time to write. That I'm really. I still love this feature script. A very high concept comedy, but. Yeah, so it's independent stuff. I also tutor on the side, so it's I make money on various projects, and some of them are passion projects that lead to making money. Because that's the thing. Even Mr. Wonderful said on the neurotic vaccine, you don't follow the money. You basically follow your passion, and that'll help get you there.
Charles, thanks for being part of the program. Christina in Tacoma, Washington, welcome to the show. Hi, Christina.
Hi, George. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
The thing that makes me the most neurotic is when they're using the microwave and they don't push the clear button to reset the correct time, and it just shows like 24 seconds or however much time was left that they didn't use.
That they didn't use instead of the clock?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You have to clear it, or else you're staring at that thing for God knows how long.
Exactly.
That's worth feeling neurotic about.
I love that. That's a great story. Thanks, Christina. There are a lot of little idiosyncrasies out there, Andy.
I know. It's really... has this ever happened to you, George, or does it just happen to me? Every time I wipe my hands with a paper towel, they get a little stickier. And I start to think they've started adding a light, sticky residue to the towels, making you need to wash your hands, and you guessed it, use another towel.
No, you're right. It's sometimes that happens that way. I don't know why. There's something in the soap or something.
I think this needs to be explored on 60 Minutes.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Next up, Gretchen's with us in the state of Washington. First-time caller. Hello, Gretchen.
Hello, George. Well, I'm so glad to talk to you. We'll be there in the Dalles, and we can't wait to see you.
May 27th. Great. It's going to be a great show.
We're really looking forward to it.
Don't forget to clap and cheer when I sing.
Oh, I won't. I promise.
Thank you.
We're big fans, and seeing you was on our bucket list, so we're really excited about that. I have so many neuroses that I told Tommy that it'd take all night to tell you all of them, so I guess I'll pass on that.
What's your biggest one?
My biggest one? Oh, I guess people not returning carts to the, out in the parking lot at the supermarket when they leave their shopping carts out there.
Just right there in the parking spots. Now most places have these little cubicle outsides that you can push the cart in, and they go and pick them up there. That's okay.
But then that welcomes a whole other neurotic annoyance that they get locked, all these carts, and then you have to yank them very hard to get them dislodged.
Oh, I know, and it's so embarrassing. And then you go to the next one, and it doesn't do it either.
Oh, that happens to you too. Yeah, I feel like such a weakling that the cart is winning the fight.
Or somebody leaves something in there, like a piece of paper or a towel or something.
Exactly. So I skip over that cart. So I have
that's
to
right.
pull
You don't
out
want
yet
that
another
one.
Cart.
I remember during the COVID days, supermarkets did away with the little tiny hand baskets. Remember those?
Mm-hmm.
Those were convenient. And I guess they didn't want them anymore, so you just had to use the big cart. But they're back to the little baskets again.
Right.
Thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you out there at the Dolls on May 27th. I'm looking forward to that. We do these live shows around the country, Andy.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
We have a great time. So where's the next place you're going to be playing music? I want to come by and see you.
Oh, that would be great. Well, we're always working it. I've just talked to a place today where actually it was the last place I performed before the world changed in 2020. A fellow in Westwood in Los Angeles, a great place. And there's new management now compared to back then, but they want us back. And yeah, who knew? A couple days later, we were hearing word of this thing going around, and to hear that recording from March 2020 and just not realize what was about to take place is kind of chilling.
Just let Tom know where you're playing. We'll pop up.
Oh, yeah. When I find out what that is, I'd love to let you guys know.
All right. Joe in the Bronx. Well, take it away, Joseph.
George, how are you, George?
Good. You're a musician, aren't you, Joe?
Yes, I am.
I remember that. That's right.
Yes, definitely. I'm a singer-songwriter as well. Andy, I wanted to know if you've ever experienced any OCD rituals like hand-washing or checking, etc., ruminating thoughts, possibly?
Oh, it's funny that you should mention OCD because if I may transition to Michael Smirkanish, who was on one of the neurotic vaccine episodes, he asked Dr. K whether this was a case of OCD. He said on the show that he must have a undefiled New York Times every day. It cannot be touched by anyone else. And I asked him, well, of course, during the pandemic. He said, no, it has nothing to do with the pandemic. So it's not only all the news that's fit to print, but all the news that's fit to touch.
That's funny. Joe, thanks. Appreciate it. Tell Michael Smirkanish that he is a giant in the industry, by the way.
Oh, yeah. He's a terrific guy. Oh, I will tell him that.
He's a good guy.
Fellow Philly guy.
Oh, is that where he's from?
Oh, yeah. He's Philly through and through.
I always think about Philadelphia when I think of the first Rocky movie.
Oh, yeah. I referenced Burgess earlier in the show. That's right. You can't forget that.
You're going to get a kick out of this. About a year ago, I'm at a place here in L.A., and in comes Stallone with about 4 of his buddies surrounding him. And I went, I got to tell him this story, but how do I get to him? All these guys are there.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm just going to get up. So as he's walking by my table, I stood up, and, the 4 buddies jump up. They're like his security, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Sly, I gotta ask you this. Did your brother Frank used to work at Bloomingdale's, right, in New York? He stopped everybody and went, how did you know that?
Wow.
He said, nobody knows that. And I said, well, listen to this story. One of my dear friends used to work with your brother at Bloomingdale's, and your brother told my friend, my brother's going to be a big superstar one day. He's writing a script about a boxer.
Wow.
And he went, oh, my God, that's right before I did my Rocky script. And he loved it. He loved the story. And all the 4 guys all backed down.
What a victory moment for you.
Yeah, that was cool.
You must have felt like Rocky for a second there.
Yo, Adrian.
Doing the dance with your hands up in victory.
That's right. I miss Burgess Meredith, don't you?
Yeah, he was great. What a great character actor.
Oh, my God. Great Twilight Zone episodes he was in.
That's right, with the broken glasses.
Yeah, that's right. He couldn't read his books.
Mm-hmm.
We got time for one more quick call. Let's go to Pete in North Carolina. Pete, let's squeeze you in here. Go ahead.
George, I'm glad I got you on the phone. I got a neurosis. I need to tell you, I got this fear of enemas.
What's that?
I got a fear of enemas.
Oh, well, that's all right. That's almost comedian type, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, I think it would. You have to be neurotic not to have a fear of that. So that might be something to ponder.
I love it. Andy, how do people get your works? You've got a book out called Banging My Head Against the Wall that we talked about 4.5 years ago.
Right. It's still out there, and it was acquired by the National Comedy Center in Jamestown, New York, Lucille Ball's hometown. I'm proud of that in 2019. And the big project is, again, the Neurotic Vaccine Podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe for free or listen. And Benstown McVeigh Media Podcast Networks, Jay Leno, Kathy Geiswhite, Jerry Mathers, and Tony Dow, comedian Elon Gold from Curb Your Enthusiasm, Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful, Mary Lou Henner, therapy, comedy departments, years in the making, literally. I'm really excited about the show, and I hope people get a kick out of it.
Do you talk to Jay Leno often?
Well, he not often. I haven't talked to him since the accident, but he was so nice. He not only offered his services to be the guest on the first episode, he called in later to suggest a comic who he thought would be perfect for the show because he's neurotic, and he's on episode 4, Elon Gold. It was funny on the show. He talks about working on Curb Your Enthusiasm and improvising with Larry David, and he came up with, he says, our people, Jewish people, we use in a positive way. This is delicious. And Larry, in an improv, immediately said, whereas is a bad thing.
Andy, keep in touch with us. You did a great job. Up next, Open Lines on Coast to Coast. We've got open lines for you now on Coast to Coast. We'll talk about just about anything. These strange balloons. We shot down some other object again today over Alaska. Strange times. But jump on board and do say a prayer for the people in Turkey and Syria. I mean, that devastation of that earthquake was just horrible, to be sure. As we do as a normal quick feature during Open Lines, Ask George. Tom, tell folks a little bit about that, how they can send in a question, and then we've got a couple right now.
Well, every time we do Open Lines, we do the feature called Ask George. You can email your questions, and I'll say this again at the end, to askgeorge@coasttocoastam.com. We comb through them and pick a few every time we do Open Lines to Ask George. I have a question to start before we do this. What makes it not a quirk and you being neurotic? Like, what's the difference?
It's a fine line.
Yeah,
fine line, because, my little fixation with burned out light bulbs, I'm not really sure that's being neurotic.
I think it's a quirk.
It's more of an obsession or a quirk.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think so. Okay, let's go with Jennifer in San Antonio, Texas. You've owned a horse farm. What was your least favorite daily chore you had to do?
Well, I had employees out there, so I didn't have much. I guess my least favorite chore, writing payroll checks. But I had a beautiful farm. I picked it up years ago, 1994, and would raise standard-bred racehorses. They're the ones where the person sits in a little buggy. They call it a sulky.
Yeah.
And they had racing like that around the St. Louis, Illinois area.
How many horses did you have?
72 at one time.
Did they all have names?
Oh, yeah, they all had legal names.
Could you
literally get titles like a car? You get a certificate.
Could you literally walk up to one and just go, "Hey, Silver"?
Some of them that I knew, yeah.
That's funny. Okay, Randy in Connecticut. Who was the stricter parent growing up, your mom or your dad?
They were both pretty lenient. I would think my dad probably was the stricter of the two, but they weren't strict, both of them. I mean, they were pretty laid back.
Nice people. I've met them both.
Mom's still going. She's going to be 94 the day after our event at the Dolls in Oregon.
Yeah, but Mom threw away your baseball cards.
Somebody did.
Oh, man. Cindy in Malibu, California, if you could bring back one of these people back to life, who would it be, Patty Duke or Doris Day, and why?
I think, well, not that I have the power to bring back anybody, but I'd like to meet Doris Day. She'd be probably a great interview.
Very good. If you have a question we can ask George, send a question to askgeorge@coasttocoastam.com. Just send your name, your number, and the question, and we just might pick it.
And open lines continue in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to the open line portion of Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you, and let's get to your phones as soon as we can and dial up, and let's see what we can talk about. But what a series of weeks. I mean, we could talk for hours about events that have been happening all around this planet these days. Let's see what's on your mind, though. Let's start with Nadia in Columbia, South Carolina, first-time caller. Hi, Nadia.
Wow, yeah, thank you so very much. I also could talk for hours and hours, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. I don't know, have you heard about this discovery, I guess, of the paintings on caves and things and the dots and the dashes that archaeologists maybe didn't know exactly what they meant or what all the symbols meant, was actually discovered, that they were counting days and harvest seasons by some guy who actually, sells furniture. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
That's pretty good. How'd you pick up on that?
What do you mean?
How did you hear about this?
I guess I probably should have checked my source, fact-checked it, but I heard it on NPR, and I find NPR to be a reliable source of new information as
They're
new
pretty good.
information comes at us very fast. But I'm sorry?
They're pretty good. Are you into archaeology, Nadia?
A little bit, yeah. I'm a little bit into everything. I'm more so into philosophy and the way people think and perceive the world around them and consciousness and ourselves. And but I dabble in geology. I find rocks to be interesting, yes, and the earth.
Well, let me ask you this about psychology of people. Do you think people are acting weird these days?
As opposed to ever before?
Like more so?
Yeah, I mean, I ask other people if they feel the same way, but I mean, then they always say, look back, especially, say to another white woman, sorry, things seem crazy. People are acting crazy, right? And things used to be way worse. According to who? I mean, I never lived it, but I don't know. I have nothing to compare it to but this specific experience. And I know Rene Descartes is rolling in his grave just because, I think, therefore I exist. But to answer your question more simply, yes. People are acting.
I think you're right. People are really acting strange these days, and carjackings are at an all-time high. I mean, it's just there's a lot of tension out there. Maybe it had to do with COVID. I'm not sure. Cornelius is with us in Alexandria, Louisiana. Hey, did you escape that tornado?
Oh, yeah, we didn't have a problem here. That was more or less down in South Louisiana and stuff. But George, just like Nadia, she senses something's wrong. And I got to tell you, you need to get your friend Chris on here that's head of Newsmax so he can try to get some generation, because they're trying to kick conservatives off of all these different things and stuff.
Yeah, they're tightening up. They're doing some strange things. DirecTV booted them off.
I know. But look, George, like I said, get Chris on as a guest, and we'll talk to him and try to drum up some support for Newsmax. Now, what I call for, being Black History Month and everything, George, there's a guy named Abraham W. Bolden. He was the first African-American Secret Service officer for John F. Kennedy.
Right.
He has a book out called The Echo of Demon Plaza. He tried to prevent the assassination, just like you said you try to take Christ down off the cross. I heard you the other night. But, they set him up and stuff. And these people at Reddit just think that I'm lying and all like that. But got a joke there where they show Rush Limbaugh, you, and Paul Harvey are guarding me in prison and stuff. So it's pretty funny. You ought to see that on Reddit. But they really try to crucify Coast to Coast AM and the callers and stuff. But I think we're getting ready for war, George. The Communist Chinese released this virus. Then they send these balloons and stuff over here. So if you saw that balloon pass, it came down where these nuclear missile sites and stuff are at. So I think we'll be at war pretty soon. And,
well, the thing with balloons, though, you can't control them wherever they are flying. They just go with the wind. So, but it's weird. It's just low-tech technology to spy on us, to be sure. But thanks for the call. Sherry is in Kentucky, east of the Rockies. Welcome to the show. Hi, Sherry.
Hey, George. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. What's up?
Enjoying this little one. Oh, I was just wanting to ask. I come across a documentary, and I was just wondering if you knew anything about human grounding.
I've heard a little bit about that, yes.
I was just wondering if it's really that effective. I mean, I didn't catch the whole show on it and the whole documentary, but I found it interesting, and I just didn't know. I hadn't heard any guests on your show talking about it, so I didn't know if you knew a lot about it or not.
We talked a little bit about it years ago, but I wouldn't want to hold on to any electricity, even though I might be grounded. Would you?
No, I wouldn't want to do that. But what he was talking about was like walking barefooted. He said that's beneficial to your health.
Well, anytime you touch nature, it's beneficial to you, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, he had different people with their stories on there, and there was actually some football players, and their coach made them walk out in the grass for 15 minutes, and they had significant benefits from it.
To be
It's supposed
earthy.
to help with, earthing, yeah. So it was supposed to help with inflammation and stuff like that. So
It works. Have you done this? Have you walked in the old sand with your shoes off?
not in a long time. Now, when I was a kid, you couldn't keep us in shoes. We was out barefooted all the time. Not since I've been more, an adult. I haven't done it as often, but I'm thinking maybe I should take it back up.
Just be careful of broken glass and all that other stuff, huh?
Yeah, but I thought, well, you could find your spot, I guess, and sit on the grass for a while. That would probably help. So I don't know. But anyway, I think it'd be worth a try. I'd try it just to see. It wouldn't hurt anything.
Nope, just be careful. That's to be sure. But there's nothing like walking on a beach, letting your toes into the sand. It's a great feeling. Next up, we've got James in San Diego. Hello, James. Welcome to the program.
Hey there, George. You're great. Awesome show. I loved Andy Cowan. He's brilliant and a funny guest.
Oh, good guy. Great writer,
yeah,
too.
He's amazing. I was just going to mention my neurosis is, having to click on those teeny tiny boxes with signs, traffic lights, cars, or road markings when you have to authenticate yourself online in certain sites.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been through that, so you know how that goes, right? Also, prayers to the people in Turkey. I just wanted to mention that.
What a horrible situation up there.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. But I was going to comment something. Leave It to Beaver was a great show. You can watch a lot of these old shows on YouTube, like Beverly Hillbillies, Honeymooners. Jackie Gleason and Alice Cramden as Ralph and Alice Cramden, excuse me.
Old classics, aren't they?
They were, yeah. They were among the first to bicker on a sitcom. Can you believe it? They didn't have a lovely small house with a white picket fence surrounding their home. They lived in a drab apartment. They had no children, and Ralph was a bus driver with all kinds of crazy schemes to make him and Alice's life better.
And he always yelled at Art Carney by calling him Norton, right?
Yes, he did. Norton! He was amazing. And there was an interview with him on 60 Minutes with Morley Schaefer a few years before he died. And he said his upbringing was a lot like that. It was a drab. I mean, he had a very loving mother, but the lights burned a little bit dim, in their apartment. And it was like there were a lot of Cramdens in Brooklyn just like that. Anyway, I just wanted to know, George, what are your thoughts on that show? Did you watch any?
I watched it as a kid. I thought it was hilarious. It was black and white.
Yeah.
And, everything was, if I remember correctly, the entire show was in their little apartment, right?
Exactly. They didn't move. I mean, maybe they would have shot maybe one scene outside where they were in a pool hall or something like that, but it was basically all in their apartment, and they pulled it off brilliantly, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure did. And then, people would come to the apartment, but everything was there.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And Jackie Gleason was never happy, was he?
No, he was never happy, but he was an amazing comedian. He really was.
He sure was.
God rest his soul. Anyway, George, it's great talking to you. You have some great shows on. I love you. And you have a great night.
All right, James, thanks. Jackie Gleason was a staunch believer, by the way, in extraterrestrial life, had volumes of books on that. And one day, said that Richard Nixon took him down to Homestead Air Force Base down in Florida and showed him showed him a real extraterrestrial body that they had down there. It's an incredible story. I would have loved to have interviewed him a long time ago. Let's go to Jeff in Ferguson, Missouri. Welcome to the program. Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey, how's it going these days?
Okay, everything's good. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, I saw that balloon when it passed over St. Louis.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
How big was it?
It was like a dot. It was just like a dot.
But you could see it moving, right?
Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to comment about something else.
Sure.
I've been having these. Has anyone commented about how they've been feeling like something's going to happen soon?
Yes.
But they can't, with everything going on.
Yep.
Yeah, the last time I felt like this was before the Margot raid.
What's your gut tell you?
I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what's going to I just know something. This feels like with the Russian troops building up again, I just think maybe that's going to something happen over there again soon.
Yeah, that could get really
out
of hand.
Yeah, one last thing. But next time you have a long visit in St. Louis, are you going to have one of those shows here soon?
We're not planning for Saturday. I had a St. Louis live show a couple of years ago. I don't think we're going to have one in there for at least a couple more years. We're going to try for Boston, Indianapolis, Charlotte, North Carolina, and a couple others. But we'll get back there.
Oh, and one more thing. You guys were talking about Leave It to Beaver. There was a brief 80s continuation when he was as him as an adult. It was like a syndicated run type deal.
With Jerry Mathers?
Yeah.
He was funny. They were all good.
Yeah. All right. I just wondering if you heard about that one.
Yeah, I did.
All right. I've been trying to get a call through to the east of the Rockies line, but for some reason it gets strange tone on my phone.
Well, it's busy all the time. People are always on it. Nobody's complained about it.
I don't know if it's just my phone.
You sure you're dialing the right number?
Yeah, I'm looking at. I look at it on the website, and then I can seem to get through on the wild card line.
That's weird. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, Jeffrey. Take care of yourself. Let's take one more call, then a break, and we'll come back for more. Jeremy in Jamestown, North Dakota. Hey, Jeremy, go ahead.
Hello, my great friend George.
How you feeling these days?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you remember what you were doing 19 years, 2 months, and 3 days ago?
19 years, 2 months, 2 days?
19 years, 2 months, and 3 days ago.
I do not remember.
I do, and just to think, they say I have a bad memory.
What were you doing?
I was driving my...
Oh, this was your accident again.
Yep, my Kia Rio up from Casper to Gillette, Wyoming.
Yeah, I guess if I had that kind of accident, I'd remember exactly the day, the hour, the moment, too, like you do. So I would say 19 years ago for me, it was probably uneventful. That's probably why I don't remember it. But you'll never forget it, will you?
Nope, I won't. You know what I think you should have for a guest place that you go to this year?
What's that?
You should go to Fargo, North Dakota, because I don't think you've had a coast-to-coast show there since George Norrie was around.
Fargo, North Dakota. Definitely not in the wintertime, that's for sure. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break and come back with more Open Lines on Coast to Coast AM. And, of course, we'll be back in a moment with more Open Lines on Coast to Coast and next hour as well, and a little bit of witchcraft as well. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. So next month we go back to daylight saving time, and this could be the last time we make these switches. They may just keep it the way it is, and I'm in favor of that. I think we should just keep it as one thing out of this switching back and forth is crazy, and just keep it on one. And I like the fact that you get the extra sunlight with your time. So I would keep it on the way it is. When we switch in March, just keep it that way. But let's find out what happened. The Senate has passed it, but it's got to pass the House and all that stuff. Let's go back to the phones. Catherine is in British Columbia, west of the Rockies. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, George. This is the first time I got through.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I just wanted to know a couple things. Jerry Lewis, did you ever get a kick out of that guy?
I met him once a long time ago on a cruise ship, but he was a tough guy to deal with, I'm told. But he did a great job for the kids with muscular dystrophy. Why do you ask?
Well, when I was little, he got me hooked on comedy, and that's when I loved it. Ever, Carol Burnett, it just escalated from there, and I love comedy, so I just wondered about him because not too many people talk about him, and yes, but he was the first one that I saw as a little girl, so I thought
he was pretty good. Do you remember him in the movie The Nutty Professor?
Did he wear a sailor's outfit? Because that's all I remember as a little kid.
God, I can't remember.
The sailor's outfit.
He would do that in his comedy sketches, but I don't think in that. Yeah,
it's
pretty good memory.
It's wild because I was mesmerized by looking at this thing in black and white. Right?
He was a great talent. He was a super talent.
And you were talking about lights that drove you nuts, light bulbs.
Yes.
And
are you the same way?
I'm the same way when I'm driving, and if someone's coming towards me with one light bulb burnt out, it drives me nuts. I'm like, but it's everywhere now. Like
there are lots of headlights burned out in cars. You're right. They're all over the place, and that's kind of dangerous too, because from a distance it looks like it's a motorcycle, and then boy, you could clip. Got to be careful.
We used to get a lot of tickets for that, and I guess maybe they're not handing out tickets anymore. I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Good point. But it was really nice talking to you, George.
All right, Catherine. Call again, British Columbia. We love our Canadians. Let's go to Todd in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Todd. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Mr. Norrie. Now, I'm a G.I. Joe man. I've talked about G.I. Joe several times on your program, and I have an inoculation cure for your fear of clowns, and I have a couple of clown action figures that I would like to send you.
You don't really have to send me clown action figures, but what's your recommendation?
Well, I think you need to create a collection of scary action figures and dolls like Twilight Zone dolls. And once you start collecting all these clowns and different Twilight Zone action figures that have been made for over the years, you really start to enjoy it, and you can make a little Halloween pantheon, like a House of Horrors type of thing for your hallway or somewhere, where you hang out or like to spend time.
I'm really not scared of clowns, but I just find them to be creepy.
Well, do you like haunted houses?
They don't bother me.
Okay, well, the thing with Twilight Zone, it's just the whole creep factor. I mean,
I love the Twilight Zone. I think that was a great show.
Yes, sir. Well, like that woman was talking about the sailor outfits, like Robert the doll has this navy white sailor outfit, and nobody knows what his original uniform would have looked like. But, when G.I. Joe was in the 60s, he never got a white sailor dress uniform, but, he got one for the Pearl Harbor anniversary in 2001. So, if you're just willing to, let me send you a couple of these figures, it's like I think you'll really enjoy starting to build your collection.
Well, I'll put you on hold, and Tom will give you our mailing address. Tommy, go ahead and take care of that, and have him send the clowns to you. Next up, let's go to Mike in Detroit. Hey, Michael, go ahead.
Hi, George. How you doing?
Okay. How's Detroit doing?
Oh, it's doing all right. It's cold, brother. It's cold out here. I'm working right now, actually. But, the reason I called you is I was curious if you were going to do any more shows on Skinwalker Ranch. I've just been fascinated with what they put out the last couple of years on the History Channel.
Probably my colleague George Knapp will do that because he's an expert on that subject.
Oh my gosh,
he wrote a book about it.
Fascinating. Yes, that I listen to everything I could possibly get my hands on about that place.
I'll send him a note. Tell him to do an update.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, because they were talking about a season 4, and I thought, maybe one of these days they're going to get it back on, but I haven't seen anything come back on yet.
What do you think of that ranch?
I think it doesn't like being messed with.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
They're just everything that they do seems to come right back to zero. Just ask more questions. It's fascinating. I mean, the jaw dropper for me, I don't know if you saw the episode, is when they shot that rocket into the air there, and it disappeared.
And poof, it was gone.
I was like, what in the something's not right here. But because I was a skeptic, and now I'm like kind of it's a head scratcher. So I was just fascinated by it, and I thought, you know what, would be the perfect person to have a show on this would be George Norrie.
And George Knapp will be even better. So I'll let George know.
And I remember even the Art Bell shows. They were just fascinating.
Yeah.
It was those and the Malachi Martin shows and stuff like that were just all absolutely fascinating to listen to.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Mike. We'll work on that. Hard to believe we're coming up on 5 years since Art Bell passed away. 5 years. Seems just like yesterday. Time's going by way too fast. Constantine with us in Long Island, New York. First-time caller. Welcome to the show. Hi, Constantine.
Hey, how you doing, George?
Great. Love your name, by the way. It's powerful.
Well, it's a Greek name. I don't know. It is what it is. It's not easy when you meet somebody and you have to spell it out for them.
Yeah, that's true. Did they ever Did they shorten it when you were a kid?
Yeah, but I'm not going to get into that because then people think that you want to be called something when you really don't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I prefer the full legal name.
Yeah.
But thanks for the compliment. I've been listening to you for the longest time, this is the first time I've ever called in.
Well, welcome to the show. What's up?
Is it too late to get in on the whole neurosis discussion?
No, we can do that. You and me. Go ahead.
All right. So this is similar to the caller that was talking about the microwave. Do you remember that?
Yeah, she didn't like the number left on the microwave.
Well, I agree completely. It's a very selfish thing to do. You just leave it, without clearing it. But I have a similar situation that I don't like, which is if there's this is obviously like an office setting. If there's somebody brings bagels or donuts into the office, right?
Yeah.
You'll get somebody who somehow finds a knife, and they'll cut it in half. And you ask them, why do they do this? And they'll say, oh, well, I just want half. And then you say, well, what do you think is going to happen to the other half? And they'll be like, oh, well, maybe somebody will want the other half. But it never happens.
You mean they cut it in half and just leave it there?
And just leave it there, yeah. And then when you go to the box, when it's kind of all finished, guess what you see? You see the abandoned half. Yeah.
Why don't they just take the half with them?
That's what it's like you either want it or you don't want it.
Yeah, it's your bagel, take it,
Take it, yeah. Otherwise, don't take it. Or similar, like if there's like a pizza party, that's even worse. But it drives me insane, and I will hunt the person down that did it, just to understand why they did that. Because
how do you confront them? What do you say to them?
I'll be like, was that you? I know it was you, and they know that I got them, and they'll be like, oh, well, I just want half, and I'll say, well, you either take it or you don't take it,
Take the whole bagel.
Yeah, take the whole thing. I mean, really what should happen is one person who does that should find the other person who does that.
And give him the other half.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just like your thing with the light bulbs and the color with the microwave. That's my neurosis, if you will.
Thing. All right, Constantine, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Next up, we go to Anthony in Columbus, Ohio, east of the Rockies. Hello there, Anthony.
How you doing, George?
Okay, hope you are too.
I've called in a couple times over the years, and I want to call in to thank you. I've been listening to you since 1997 when I got my first computer. But before that, my mom started listening to Art Bell back in when he first started, and that's how I lived with her until I was 30, and I picked up on you guys. But I want to thank you that you have opened my horizon and pineal gland to absorb information because of all the different subjects that you talk about.
Well, you're welcome, Anthony.
And I have studied the Illuminati, and I'm going back 1,000 years now. And I thank you for all you do for people and talk about all those subjects. The reason I called tonight is most people don't, and you haven't talked that much about HARP. Maybe I've missed the program.
It's been a while.
But right now, with all that's going on around the world, we need to pay more attention to what HARP is and what they do. And these stations are all around the world, and they geo-manipulate weather patterns.
Time to get Dick Begich back on. He's the expert.
Well, I mean, I'm all over the internet. I'm up 40 hours a week after midnight listening and searching out stuff. It's just there's much more needs to be brought out to the public about what these deep state people of the world are doing through weather patterns.
Okay,
you know,
make a note on that.
The chemtrails, the atmospheric warming, workmanship to produce earthquakes and volcanic eruption. It's not all just natural.
It's a good point. But we'll work on that. I'll call Nick Begich, and he's the expert on HARP, and see what's going on. Eric's with us, truck driving in Indiana. Hello there, stranger. Welcome.
George!
There you are. Eric, the mind control guy.
Yes, sir. How y'all been?
We're doing well. How about you?
Doing good. Trucking out to St. Louis tonight.
How are you? Say hi to my friends.
Okay. Anyway, in the last week or so, folks were been talking about that balloon that was flying over.
Yeah.
And everybody had their theory of what was going on. Of course, we're lied to so much, we don't know what's true and what's not. But it got me to thinking about a book that I read years ago that's in an 18-book series so far. And I got to thinking about, a balloon, 40,000, 50,000, it is. Well, if you remember last year, somebody blew up the Georgia Guidestones.
Right.
And on that Georgia...
You still there?
$1.5 billion. Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
you dropped out for just a little bit right after you said blew up the Guidestones.
They're listening as always. Anyway, so it said keep the population down to less than 1.5 billion. Well, back in the 70s, I believe it was, the unseen powers that be had a plan called Global 2000 to lessen the Earth's population by 2 billion people by the year 2000. Well, during that time, they said there was about 5 billion people on the planet Earth, and we've had all kinds of wars, diseases, every kind of thing you can happen that kills people off. Well, now we're over 9 billion, so Global 2000 didn't work that great.
No, it didn't work at all for them.
Exactly. So in the last couple of years, we've been hearing about this thing called fentanyl. And if you touch it, get it on your skin, you can drop dead. And so I got to thinking, well, if the powers that be, clandestine powers that be, had several hundred or maybe even a couple thousand of these high-altitude balloons loaded down with something like fentanyl or even something worse than that, and in the middle of the night, say about, 2, 3 in the morning, all these things were popped, and all over the entire continent, even Canada, Mexico, Central America, whatever. And if these things popped and all that deadly dust started floating down, by the time it got to the surface, everybody would be awake, going to work, going to school, landing on stuff. And my theory is that if they did something like that in one fell swoop in less than a week, they could completely, virtually wipe out the entire population. And then if they seeded the clouds with where they can make the clouds rain, a torrential downpour for 3 or 4 days to wash all that nasty stuff off, the Chinese or whoever could walk into a ready-made country.
That's a tragic possibility, but I'm not so sure they would do that. Back with more open lines. More open lines for you on Coast to Coast. Lots going on, and we'll be ready to chat with you when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Open Lines here at Coast to Coast Land. George Norrie with you. Great to be with us. Don't forget to go to our website quite often and sign up for our free YouTube channel. If you would, just go to YouTube and type in Coast to Coast AM Official in the search bar, and then just fill out the information, and you are in. It's a great thing to have. Back to the phones we go. Let's go to Robert in Killdeer, North Dakota. Welcome to the show. Hey, Robert, thanks for calling.
Hey, George, how are you tonight?
Okay, hope you are too.
Oh, I'm doing great. Have you ever interviewed Dan Madsen? He lives there in Denver, Colorado. He's the founder of the Star Trek fan club and also Star Wars, and he's interviewed just about every star that's ever been in Star Wars. He's just a very interesting man, but that's not exactly why I called tonight, but I was just kind of wondering that I sat here on hold.
I'm going to put you on hold and have Tommy check the phone. You're breaking up a little bit. Maybe we can get a better connection there, Tom. Next up, let's go to Edward in Chicago. Welcome to the program. Hey, Edward.
Hey, George. Good to talk to you. I've been listening since 85 at Talk Radio, but especially when Art Bell was on.
That's a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. I'm very concerned about spit it out as far as this mental health across the U.S. It was a bad mistake to shut down the world, and this was obviously pretty simple because, people can now communicate by social media, and I think every government just followed everybody, particularly the United Nations. Young people are not able to withstand this. If you're in the military, if you're religion, if you're over 40, you pretty much are kind of immune to something like this. But if you're young, you don't have the mental capacity to withstand it. And the son of a disc jockey I listened to was not able to handle it. He says, I can't handle this. And he took his life.
Oh, geez, that's tragic.
So what needs to happen is the last period in school, just zeroing on the young people, the last period needs to be open discussion about what's going on in your life. This will be able to smoke out potential problems. All the shooters are males. All the people, like that guy, that doctor was killed in L.A., all these confrontations are mostly male, particularly more than female.
Yeah. Serial killers, all men, mostly male.
All male. Women, I'm on because I'm single, I'm on the dating sites. They're complaining that they can't find the right guy for themselves. I mean, it's all connected.
Strange times.
Yeah.
Strange times. Edward, thanks. Appreciate it. We have a guest on Monday in our second half who believes that the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, may be the Zodiac killer as well. It's an incredible story, so make sure you're part of the program on that. Text and tweets. Tom, what do you have for us?
This one from Nancy in Dallas. What do you think determines our sense of taste, such as in food, music, etc.?
I think your nose.
Your nose determines it?
Yeah, I think smell has more to do than taste, believe it or not.
Yeah, but what makes you... Okay, you smell an apple pie and you smell...
You're saying, why do you like it?
Yeah, and macaroni. What makes it that way?
I don't know. I mean, why are things pleasant to some people and, same with music?
Good question, Nancy.
You know, music, you have a different style of music than I do, for example. Why is that?
Yeah, here's more of a question. Why do I also like the music you do and you don't like the music I do?
Yours is really hard rock stuff.
Yeah, but not all of it.
Some of it I like. I mean, I love your ZZ Top stuff.
Yeah, ZZ's pretty good.
They're good. Fogerty and all those people, they're good.
That's true.
All right, Lee in Alabama, welcome to the program. Hi, Lee.
Hey, George, how are you?
Great, sir. Thank you.
I was real busy yesterday, and I was surprised when I turned into your program. It was midnight our time. I didn't realize that the U.S. had shot down another weather balloon.
Yeah,
and,
whatever it was.
Well, not weather, but balloon.
Something.
But I was glad they went ahead and shot it down before it got over the mainland, because I know one of your callers brought that point up, and you said it too, and I had thought that, why didn't they shoot that first one down
right away
before it got over the mainland?
I think they were concerned. They didn't know what was in it.
Well, I certainly don't believe it was, a weather balloon like China's claiming, that's for sure.
Absolutely. It was definitely surveillance. I don't know what kind of information they could get, but so be it, huh?
Did they announce whether they think this one's from China also?
No, they don't. They have no idea what this is or where it came from.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad they acted this time quicker than they did before.
Yep. I don't think they're going to tolerate it much more of these things, that's for sure.
Well, I was listening. When I heard about the first one, I heard that President Biden, when they briefed him, he said he wanted it shot down, and the reporter said that the Joint Chiefs of Staff overruled Biden. And I was thinking, wait a minute now. That doesn't sound right to me that they would have overruled him. Of course, they were saying they were afraid somebody would get hurt if they shot it down over the mainland.
Yeah, exactly. They thought it could have had explosives on it or something.
Right.
They weren't sure.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks. I think we erred on the side of caution. It made a lot of sense, but it's a bizarre story. Why can't people just get along? Lori in Chicago, welcome to the show. Hi, Lori.
Hey, George, how you doing?
All right, what's going on in Chi-Town?
Oh, not a heck of a lot. The weather's pretty nice. Could be worse, could be better. At least we're not having precipitation.
Another month, springtime.
Oh, not quite.
Almost. March 21st is springtime, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Coming up about a month and a week or so.
It takes forever.
It'll come.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on?
You're still talking comedians, aren't you?
We can do anything you want. It's open lines.
Perfect. I love the old sitcoms.
They're classics. What was your favorite?
Radio and TV. I like the sitcoms. And there are three comedians I like. The Two Sides of the Smothers Brothers.
Uh-huh.
With the comedy on the first side and the 6 songs on the second side. And Abbott and Costello, Who's on First.
Who's on First? That's right.
I love that one.
That was a classic.
I know. It's played more than anything else, I think, too. And even, I'm trying to think whether you told it or whether you played it or whether Wyatt Cox played it. I'm trying to think. Oh, Stan Freberg. What's the name of that thing?
Well, what are you talking about?
Elderly Man River.
I don't think I would have gotten that one.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe Wyatt Cox played it. But that's the extent of my comedy.
Did you used to listen to old-time radio shows?
Well, not at first. And, Pat Boone has a little over a decade on me. So he'd remember a lot better than I would. And you would even remember probably better than I would. You're 79, aren't you?
No, 72.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Don't age me. I'm 72
Wow.
going on 50.
What?
I'm 72 going on 50.
That's about it. That's the only way to be, too.
That's right. I'm going to keep doing this as long as my voice sounds the same. I'll just keep doing my thing. Ben in Newton, Massachusetts, east of the Rockies. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much. You run a fascinating program. Keep me up too late.
Do you have to work generally early in the day?
No, I'm no longer working, but it's just it's worth it though. Your show is just terrific.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you if you would consider having on two guests that you used to have on a long time ago, and you haven't had them on for the last several years. One is Dr. Susan Sherry Tenpenny,
right?
Sort of an alternative medical doctor.
Right.
She was always fascinating to listen to, and I haven't heard her on your show in a heck of a long time.
And who's the other?
And the other is G. Edward Griffin, the guy who wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
We'll check into both of those.
Yeah, he would be really fascinating considering this idea that people are moving closer to of the digital dollar.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll check into that. Thank you. Great idea. Robert in Kildare, North Dakota. Let's see if we got a better connection. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, the problem is we're having a lot of solar flares up north, and that does mess with the cell phones.
That's right. The sun really was active the last couple days.
Yep, and we've had some beautiful shows up here. I'm hoping it sounds a little better, and maybe I ought to get to the point because it might get bad any time.
Sounds good right now.
Well, good. Today, of course, I work nights, and you keep me company, but today I was sleeping, and I had an amazing dream about the balloon that was up there in the air.
And what were the dreams?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what. The dream started where I was actually on the balloon, and I think you're going to find that the balloon has the ability to maneuver around, because I remember they were situating the balloon in a certain spot, and then I kind of understood what they were trying to do, but they were maneuvering over the missile silos. The missile silos are in direct communication with satellites, so they needed to be in line with the satellite to be able to communicate or to pick up signals, but that wasn't their point in the dream to get information. They were downloading a virus, which was kind of really interesting. They maneuvered around and planted these viruses, and in my dream, this virus infected the entire military system.
Jeez.
And they weren't ready to initiate the virus until all the nuclear submarines will come to the surface at one time or another and communicate. And once they communicate, then of course they download that same virus. But in the virus was for actually destroying the United States. The first wave of our own nukes attacked all of our own military bases, and we had no defenses against our own weaponry. We don't have Patriot missiles and stuff to defend from missiles coming from within our country. And then the second wave attacked all of the cities. And then the third wave, all the rest of the nukes that were still in the submarines and in the silos that they didn't use just detonated.
That was not a dream. That was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. It was a total nightmare. I called into your show back when you had a special on dreams, and I don't think it was with you. I think it was maybe George Knapp or one of your other guests, and told about a few other dreams I've had. But it was a very detailed dream, and it was kind of scary.
Let's hope that doesn't happen, huh?
I just pray and hope too. And I do want to thank you for being, on the air all this time. I've been listening to you forever. Back even with George Norrie and Art Bell. I do remember when I always wondered if it was going to be you or Art Bell, and I have to admit, back then I used to always be disappointed when you came on, but I've grown to love you better than Art Bell.
Well, how about that? It was not easy to fill those shoes, that's for sure. It never is, but it took a long time, but we all got comfortable with each other, didn't we? Thanks for the call. John in Wisconsin. Hey, John, welcome.
Hello, George. 2 quick points, please.
Sure.
First, I would like to give a shout-out to Cornelius.
Do it.
Every time I listen to him on Coast to Coast, I feel better about life. He is such a calm, kind man. We love Cornelius, which segues to my other comment, George. I'm a relatively new listener of Coast to Coast, a little over a year now. The show has been a huge blessing to me, so I have a challenge for all regular Coast to Coast listeners. I would like you to tell 7 other people you know about Coast to Coast. Now, chances are half of them will be sleeping when the show is on. Have them go to the website, sign up as an insider, 15 cents a day, and you can get every program from the previous day. My wife sleeps when I'm up, and she listens to the show during the day. It's been a huge blessing to us. George, one of your first callers on Open Line tonight, I think her name was Nadia, you asked her if people are different today, and they are different today.
They are.
And I want to encourage everybody, there's a source of transparency, wisdom, and healing, and that's Coast to Coast. So, ladies and gentlemen, please take John's challenge, and let's get everybody listening to this great show. And, George, God bless you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, John. Very kind of you. Let's take a few more calls here before the break. Let's go to Mary in New Jersey. Hello, Mary. Go ahead.
Oh, hello, Mr. Norrie. I said I think I should shut the radio off when I fall asleep because I don't know. I'm dreaming whether I heard it on the radio and you pick it up. You know, you don't know. But you had said one day you were going to maybe have the Book of Revelation go into it. So I fell asleep, and I'm having this weird dream. I'm in a courtyard, like a schoolyard, and there are all these young guys, probably about 30. I'm not good with, telling ages, right? And there's a woman standing there. And somehow I think that's me, but it can't be me because I'm little and I'm still standing there watching everything going on, right? And they're calling her name Anne. And I'm thinking, that's not my name. So, I'm just concerned, how am I going to get home? I don't even know where home was. I'm in the dream and I'm thinking, I don't know where I am. I don't know where home is, but I'm concerned. So I asked the one, he's on his way out. And I said, do you live here? I'm thinking I'll get a ride home or whatever. And he shouted out his name and something else, but I couldn't quite hear it, understand what he said. And he left. And it was so strange. And they're saying, meet the martyrs. And they were talking when it first started out, around like 2 of them. And they just kept telling me everything and talking and talking and talking. And all I thought was, how do I get home? That's all I could thinking of, right? And they just went on and on and on, like everything they did. So after that, I looked up later, and it's like, that's a starship. Like they all came out of a starship, but I don't know where they went.
Interesting
dream. Very strange. But I'm there as a little, young, but yet I could be there with the name Anne, and I'm an adult. And these dreams don't make sense, do they?
They always make sense. There's a reason behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a starship. They came out of a starship, but they're around talking, and they wouldn't stop talking. It's like telling me all what they did. They went on and on and on and on, and I'm tuning them out because I want to go home.
Maybe they're sending you a message.
That's funny. Meet the martyrs.
You got it.
Meet the martyrs.
All right, Mary, thanks. Everything's great. New Jersey. Been to New Jersey a couple times. Not a lot, but I think Sinatra was born in New Jersey. Hoboken, right? I think he was indeed. We're going to take a short break and come back and talk about witchcraft in a moment on Coast to Coast. But a little note for everybody. We've got a great program for you in store for the entire rest of the week. We've got Connie Willis coming in, Lisa Garr, and then I will be back on Monday with another great series of shows, including, of course, a discussion about the Unabomber and the Zodiac Killer in the second half of the program. where the guest believes that the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, is also the Zodiac Killer. And though some police officials ruled that out, his facts are pretty compelling. So we'll be back with more in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. The magical arts are fascinating, and one witch has written a book called The Encyclopedia of Witchcraft. It consists of almost 900 pages. I kid you not, The Encyclopedia of Witchcraft that I'm holding by Judica Ellis, 887 pages. Listen to this. That's a pretty big book, Judica. Welcome back. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine and happy to be here. Thank you.
Let's tell folks, of course, you've been a student of the magical arts since you were a child. You love tarot, the runes, the divination. You name it, you're into it. You're doing it.
Yeah, all those mystic arts. I love them.
You know, witches have gotten a very bad rap, haven't they?
Yes, for a very long time.
How come? Hollywood?
No. Oh, no. I think Hollywood in some ways, I think is better than the old folk stories. Hollywood has kind of, created a better image for witches. Look at Bell, Book, and Candle. You have a glorious, glamorous, romantic witch. There are, some pretty awful depictions, but it goes back much farther. Even back to ancient Rome. The Romans were not a witch-friendly culture. I think, in my opinion, and there are certainly many other opinions, in 887 pages I try to show different opinions and then look at it from different perspectives. But I think it's about obedience. I think that when societies become authoritarian, I think especially independent, disobedient women get a bad rap.
Yeah, they do. Well, of course, now look at the Salem witch trial there. Yeah. I think religion has a lot to do with pinpointing witches as being devil worshippers.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it is greed. It's one of the forgotten causes. It's the property disputes. When people were convicted of witchcraft, they lost their property. For those who have been to the Wax Museum or the different exhibitions at Salem Village, one of the most dramatic parts is Giles Corey, who is the only person in North America, in the United States, who was killed by pressing, which he should not have been. It was already illegal in the British Isles. But he refused. He was accused of being a witch and asked, are you not a witch? And he refused to plead. He refused to plead either innocent or guilty because he wanted to retain his property for his children. Huh. And they tried to force him to plead one way or the other by putting weights on him. And, of course, it's very dramatic. Giles Corey's last words, more weight. And he would just keep insisting that they put more weight until he died. But his family did indeed retain that property.
I think as we were kids, we were kind of pushed into thinking witches were evil. Hansel and Gretel, of course. The Wicked Witch of the West, of course, Frank Baum's book that was turned into the Wizard of Oz movie.
Although who dies in all those stories? It's the witch.
It's the witch.
Yeah, if you look at it from another perspective,
get you, my
who is the one who actually does die?
But witchcraft today, is it Wicca? Or
Wicca
is it something else?
A branch of that larger witchcraft community. It's very confusing because people use the word witch and the word Wicca in different ways.
You're right.
Right. I find that a lot of people use Wicca when they think witch is an insulting word, and they're being
let me face it. Somebody comes up to you. Some woman is out there, and you go up to her and say, "You're a witch." That doesn't sound too complimentary, does it?
Well, I don't know. You could say, "Why, thank you." Look at that beautiful Frank Sinatra song. I love that song.
That is a great song.
It's a great song. It depends. It depends who says it. It depends in what context. To be bewitching, to be beautiful and seductive. Although even that is potentially people are afraid of you.
Are you a witch?
Are you enchanting them? Yeah. Am I falling in love with you? Is it for me, or are you doing this to me? Are you making me fall in love?
You're falling in love with me? Me?
Well, in general.
Are you a witch?
Clear. It depends by whose definition. I'm not a Wiccan. I don't eat babies. I'm not a devil worshiper. So I'm always, I always ask, what do you mean? Am I an independent woman who...
Do you dress up as a witch?
I don't think I'm dressing up.
I mean, they wear black.
Yeah,
and
always.
Pointed
but
hats.
I'm from New York. We wear black all the time anyway.
Do you go to witch parties?
I will be going to a witch's ball this Halloween.
See? I knew it. Where's that held?
In this one will be, there are witches' balls all over the country now, which is sort of a nice thing.
They are.
Yeah, it's a big party. This one is one of the smaller ones. The big ones are in New Orleans and in Salem. This will be in Hudson, Massachusetts, and it's actually a benefit for a cat charity.
Now, how many people? Well, that's nice. How many?
I don't know. I've never
probably
been
a black
I've been
cat.
to the one in Salem. Yeah. So that's, I think, a good thing for a witch's ball. We're going to raise some money for a cat rescue in Massachusetts.
What is it about Halloween and witches that seem to just go together?
The old belief is that at this time of the year, and in ancient belief, the belief is that there are parallel realms. Here we are in the world of the living, but simultaneously there is a world where the dead live, and a world where the spirits live, and a world where the ghosts are supposed to be. And they're parallel, like a catering hall with different rooms, different parties going on in different parts of this huge hall, this huge universe. And during this time of year, the veil, the barriers between these worlds become very permeable. And so it's the best time to have dream visitations of your loved ones, or pay tribute the Day of the Dead, which comes right after Halloween, pay tribute to those we love and have lost. It's considered one of the best times for any kind of spell casting, any of those, divination, mystical arts, any of that sort of thing. So it's very seasonal. It's actually longer than people anticipate. People think it's Halloween, if you have a migraine and you can't do anything Halloween, you've lost your chance.
Huh.
But the traditional belief is it goes through after Christmas into January. So it's a much longer, it's those...
Well, I also will say that television with the TV show Bewitched with Elizabeth Montgomery really made that different and fun. They took the stigma away.
Yeah. The first time people really reassessed what it was to be a witch.
Yeah.
And you could wake up and be married to a witch, and maybe it wouldn't be that terrible.
She had her cute little wiggly nose and did her thing. Now her mother, I think, played by Agnes Moorehead, I think.
Yes.
That was a witch.
Yes. The older I get, the more I appreciate Endora.
Yeah.
And I was a child when it was on the first time, so I remember watching it.
So what's a warlock?
A matter of debate. A warlock is a word that is used to define a male witch, but it is a controversial word.
Why?
There are some etymology. Some people believe that it comes from a Scottish term for oath breaker, and they are offended by it. Although, if the oath was broken, it was for someone who professed to be a Christian, but was really secretly stayed a witch. So the oath broken was not to the witchcraft community, it was to the church. The other theory is it comes from a Nordic word for guardian, and the warlocks are the guardians, the magical guardians of a community. And the word in recent years has had a resurgence. For a long time, it was a fighting word. You called somebody a warlock, and they might hate you.
The Witches of East End. That seems to be popular these days.
The Witches of East End, the American Horror Coven, that's another one.
Why is it? Why are they so popular?
Witches are fun.
Especially amongst young people.
It is that power, that willingness to use power that inner defiance, and they're fun. They're rule breakers. Witches are independent thinkers. You know, I remember watching Endora when I was small, and she was, you know, the classic mother-in-law joke. But as I get older, I really do appreciate her. You know, she's really a free thinker. She says what she thinks, and she loves her family. You know, she loves her daughter. It's a very blended personification. You know, she's not a wicked witch. She's the one, you know, when there's a problem, they call Mother, you know, come and help us. It's that fun, witches, and that willingness, I think, to be yourself.
We had a fun witch named Evelyn Paglini who passed away. She was a great person. And
she was fun.
Fiona Horn, she's still going strong. Yeah. We think the world of her.
She and I will both be at Hexfest in next August in New Orleans.
Hexfest?
Hexfest. It will be the Woodstock of witchcraft. And I know I will be presenting 2 classes. I believe Fiona Horn will also be leading a workshop. It is a weekend in August. I can't off the top of my head tell you which weekend. It's on my website. But it is 3 days with a riverboat cruise of classes and workshops and a celebration of witchcraft.
That's amazing.
In the Crescent City.
That's exciting. Now, witches give spells, because I remember Evelyn Paglini would tell us that she gives spells, always good ones, of course, with candles and everything else. Is that all part of it?
Yeah. For a lot of, you know, speaking about Wicca, I mean, Wicca is a religion. Technically, it is a religion. And I do know...
Which believes in God, by the way.
A male and
a female God. That's right.
Yes, the Lord and the Lady. And it's a very ethical religion. You know, you're not supposed to harm anyone. That's the primary tenet. You know, do what you will, but harm none. But I do know Wiccans who do not cast spells. So it's a complicated, you know, what witchcraft is. I describe it as a hall of mirrors. Everything you think it might be, it is, but it isn't. So there are people who consider themselves witches and do not cast spells. But yeah, I think this. I mean, my definition. I'm a practical person, and for me, it's all about that spellcraft.
So, would you ever give a? Well, there's a difference between spells and curses, right? Are spells good or bad?
Magical spells are intended to make your life better. They are intended to harness the energies, the inherent energies of nature, of the different, you know, everything radiates a sort of energy or power, and it's an attempt to harness those to create a better life for oneself. So yes, it is intended for good. Now, you know, the caveat to that is that angry people do angry things. It's not the power.
Right.
You know, angry, resentful, jealous people are people to avoid if you can, and to watch out if you can.
Mm-hmm. Haters.
Those are people. Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to. A lot of spell casting is really innate. You know, cursing. You don't really know how to. You don't have to really know how to curse to do it.
What makes it work?
Energy. It is that directed bolt of energy. You know, in the old countries, they would call it the evil eye. And the evil eye, sometimes, it just shoots out of people. You know, the advice for avoiding the evil eye. And the evil eye is anti-fertility, anti-growth. You know, your bank account shrinks. You can't have children. You have illness. You know, instead of progressing, you regress. One of the primary ways of avoiding it is not to brag. Because there you are, for instance, standing in line in the supermarket, complaining about how many children you have and, you know, God, they keep you up at night, how terrible this is. And in front of you online is a woman who can't have children. And she's listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you're complaining about what she would, you know, kill to have. And that bolt of that bolt of anger that comes out and is directed towards someone intentionally or unintentionally. Now, a curse is when you do it intentionally.
Give us a little historical overview of witches.
I think that witches are vestiges of the oldest spiritual traditions on earth. There are witches all over the world. Wherever you go, there is a concept. Whether people approve of it or not, whether they think it's a good thing or a negative thing, you will find this person of power, this person who knows how to manipulate those secrets of the earth, the plants and the crystals and the minerals.
For Dan Galanti, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Burrows, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.